So much for joining with us. We're going to be talking about how to make money with real estate. And, of course, many of you need to have your own home. As we do a lot of surveys, we find that a lot of people don't own their own home. Now, if I had the choice of owning my own home or owning investment properties, I would own investment properties. Why? Because other people are going to make the payments on it. One of the traps that people get into is they find a great house that they want. They fall in love with the house, not the deal. They fall in love with the house. And then what happens? They're pouring all their money into this house and they're not making a profit on it. They're paying the payments. That's not what we want to do. We want to be able to find properties that we can make a profit on and long-term profit. Now, remember the 5 F's? We got to find the good deals. We've got to fund it or control the deals. We need to fix it. What's wrong with this picture? What's wrong with this real estate or the ownership of the real estate? What's the problem? We look for problems. Remember when we talked about make more money? How do you make more money? Solve bigger problems. Now, you got to figure out how you're going to make your profit. You make your profit the day you buy. You cash the check the day you sell. So I'm going to talk to you about one of the first investment properties that I bought. And this was back in 1984. And we owned this property for 38 years. And then we eventually donated it to the foundation. I'm going to show you the technique I did on this one little property, which is the first investment property I bought. And then I'm going to show you the same technique that we did many years later, but we just added zeros to it. So I'm going to actually use the same numbers. And again, when I use these numbers, don't get confused on the size of the number. Just learn about the concept and then add zeros to it. With exchange rates, add a zero to every one of the things I talk about, or times it by 3 or whatever it is to make it fit into your world. But I want to talk to you about a little property that I found. And this little property was a 4-unit building. And the situation was that the individual that owned it had bought this property years before, but he lived right next door to it. And he managed it, and he managed it for many, many years. And he was getting older, and he just had enough. He had enough of talking to tenants and renting it out and having to put up with it. Now, I'm a young guy, and so I actually ran my own ads in the newspaper. I had billboards that were in the city that said, I buy houses, any type, any condition, and then my phone number. And I ran those ads constantly. And part of the 3% was, instead of me calling all on 100 properties, the goal was for people to call me that were very motivated, that really wanted to sell. So instead of me calling all 100 properties, now I want 10 people to call me. And out of those 10, about 3 of them fit the criteria. You get the difference? So that's one of the strategies and techniques that I used in order to find these good deals. And so here's this property. It's 4 units. And remember, this was decades ago. And the guy had owned it. He had bought it, and he'd bought it for $30,000. That was his purchase price when he bought it. And it had gone up in value. Now, one of the things we want to teach you is to learn value. Until you understand value, everything is worthless. Now, if I hold up a pair of shoes and I ask my daughter how much these shoes are worth, she can tell me. If it's women's shoes, she can tell me pretty close to what she could buy them for. My father and my grandfather started in the car business about 80 years ago. And they knew, without a doubt, they'd see a car and they knew about how much it was worth because they saw a lot of cars. They knew value. They knew how they could do it. Warren Buffett has been watching these same companies, and he looks at their value and he looks at, are they making a profit? And what's the likelihood that they're going to make a profit in the next 5 and 10 years? And the marketplace is psychotic. Individuals are smart and reliable, but as a group, there's a herd mentality. And so he's looking for when things are oversold, when there's pessimism. He likes it when there's blood in the streets. He likes chaos. They like it when there's a problem right now. These big guys that do all these big real estate deals that I get involved in, they like chaos. They like it when there's problems. The same is true for you. We look for problems because very few people are trying to solve those problems. They're just They're not in it for that. It's a game. And these guys that play this game, real estate's a game, and games are fun. And they treat it as a game, but they do big, big projects. So this little property I found, the value on that, I had looked at other properties and I knew that the value was much higher. And so I knew that the value of this property was around $80,000. That was the value. So if I was to buy it and resell it, I could sell it for, around $80,000. Now, this gentleman picked up this phone and he called me. Remember, part of that 3% is to get people to call you. And so he called me and we negotiated a price of $60,000. Now, this guy had bought the property and he owned it outright, meaning that he'd paid it off and he'd owned it. Now, he'd bought it for $30,000 years previous to that. And again, if you need to add a zero, just remember, it's the percentages that we're interested in here. And he bought this property years ago. He had managed it and he bought it for a lot less than that and it had gone up in value. And he says, I'm getting older. I want to retire. And so I made him an offer to buy it for the $60,000. Now, we did something very interesting. I said, well, there's a couple options we can do. What is it you really want to accomplish? Now, where do you negotiate with people? Usually over the kitchen table. And you don't pull out these big, crazy offer pads. What we did is I sat down with him on a yellow notepad and we doodled out the deal. Would you take this? Would you take this? What are you looking for? How can I get that for you? Things like that. And one of the things I found out is that he liked the monthly income that was coming in. He didn't like the management. Okay. He liked the monthly income, but he didn't like the management. Now, he could have simply found a management company to come manage it, and they would never know that he was the owner of it. And he just happened to live next door. But he decided that he'd had enough. He'd owned it for quite a few years. And so he wanted to sell it. So I made him an offer and I said, I'll be happy to pay you $60,000. Now, why did he want to take the 60 grand? Was because he had bought it for 30,000. Remember the rule of 72? How long does it take for something to double in value? Well, he had bought it for 30,000 years previous to that. And I said, well, there's two ways that we can do this, but what is it you really want? Well, I like the monthly income off of it. All right. Well, if you like the monthly income, there's a couple ways that we can do it. Number one, I can go to the bank and I can borrow enough money to be able to buy the property off of you and get you your cash. Now, if I gave him all that cash, he's going to have to pay taxes on it. He's going to have to pay taxes right now. And the more money you make in a year, the higher your taxes are, the higher percentage they are. And I said, I can give you all your cash. I can write you a big check for this by going to the bank and borrowing the money from the bank and then getting you your cash. Now, when you do that, you're going to have to pay a lot of taxes. So if I got you that $60,000, and guess what? He's going to have to pay taxes on that. And with state and federal and stuff like that, let's just say for ease that he had to pay 25% of that. He's going to have to pay $15,000 in taxes, which leaves him $45,000 after. So he's got $60,000. He has to pay 15 of it in taxes. And then what's going to happen? He's going to have $45,000 left. Now, what's he going to do with that $45,000? Well, he's going to take it to the bank and put it in the bank. How much money is the bank going to pay him? Well, the bank's not going to pay him that much. They're only going to pay him about, let's say 3%. Okay. And in many cases, it's probably 2% if he wants to say if it's 2%. So they're going to pay him only about 2%. So that's not very much. Over a year's period of time, he would only get about $900 a month in income, between $900 and let's say $1,200 a year in income. Now we got all of his cash. Yes, I got my cash and I could take my cash and I could put it someplace else. But if I take it to the bank and I only get 2 to 3%, I'm not going to make that much money off of it. And I says, hey, maybe there's a better way to do this where we don't have to pay so much to the IRS. How about if I do this instead? How about if I pay you monthly payments on it and I make payments to you instead? And so what we did was I came up with a very small down payment. So the down payment was only a couple $1,000s. Okay. Actually, it was $5,000 is what we agreed to, is $5,000 of the down. And I owed him $55,000 is what I owed him. So this was the down payment. Now, where did I get the down payment? Well, the down payment, when you buy a property, this was a rental property. And so when you buy a property, let's say you close and you own it on the first of the month, what you get is that you get all the rents, because people pay the rent on the first of the month and then they live there for the month. Interest is calculated opposite of that. You owe money and interest accrues for the month, and then you make the payment. So if you close on the first of the month, then I got all the rental income. Okay. In addition to that, I got all the security deposits, because when those people moved in, they gave us a security deposit, and I took that security deposit. And then when they move out, I have to give them their security deposit back. But guess what? I get somebody else that gets to pay me a new security deposit. Okay. So of the down payment of the $5,000 I had, the rents were $800 a month for the 4 units. Now, you're going to laugh when you hear these numbers, but so I was able to get $800 for the rent and $800 for security deposits, which was $1,600. And so my whole down payment, $1,600 is what I got a plus for, was only $3,400 down. Now, of the $55,000, I said, I'm going to make you payments on that. Now, what we agreed to was I agreed to pay him a 10% on a monthly basis for 15 years. So the purchase price is $60,000, $5,000 down. The remaining balance of $55,000 I owed at 10% over 15 years. And I literally made him payments of $591.03 per month. Times 12 is around $7,000 a year. Now, he liked that a lot. So my payment to him was $591.03, because I remember that because I paid that thing for 15 years. And he got those payments every month. Now, isn't that a lot better than he would have got from the bank? Absolutely. He wanted the monthly income. Number two is he didn't get taxed at a high rate because he was only getting money on a monthly basis. So the tax burden was much, much smaller. And I made him payments for many, many years. Now, years later, the interest rates went down and we renegotiated at 7%. I said, you know what, I can go to the bank and pay you off. But he says, I like that monthly payments. And so we negotiated it down to a 7%, and I end up paying this all off in about 12 years. The rents were $800 a month. Okay, the rents were $800 a month. Now, the first thing that we did was, once we got all the property, then we started raising the rates on them. So we increased the rental rates from $200 a unit to to $250 and then $300 a unit. So our rental rates went up. So our income was higher, but our payments were still the same. So this is one of the first little properties that we did. And just in a quick review, the property was worth a higher amount. It was worth about $60,000 or $80,000. I bought it for $60,000. He bought it for $30,000 and thought he was getting a great deal. And so that was what the purchase price was, a small down payment. And then I made him payments. This is called owner financing. And I made him payments instead of going to the bank. And I made him payments of $591 per month for 12 months. And we did that started at 15 years. And then the interest rates went down and I started paying a higher payment. That's one of the things we're going to teach you how to do stuff, is to do a higher payment. And we paid it off in less time than that. Now, this property is one that we owned for many years. And like I said, we owned it for almost 40 years. So we bought it for $60,000. And guess what happened on that? The value of that property went up in value. The loans paid down. Okay. So the loans paid down. So I'm going to come down here and show you what it really looked like. So here's the property. The purchase price was $60,000. Now, over that period of time that we owned it, The rule of 72 says you take the number 72 and you divide the interest rate into it, or the value of appreciation. So this property, if stuff is going up at 3%, it takes 24 years, or 3 times 24 equals 72. It takes at 3% going up in value, takes 24 years for it to double in value. Well, this property here we bought for $60,000. 40 years later, we sold it for $490,000. We sold it for $490,000. The $60,000 we owed went to zero. So the loans were zero now. All of this is profit. So the value was at $490,000 because it went up in value. The purchase price in 1984 was $60,000. The value in 2000 and I think it was 2019 was somewhere around there, one of those years like that, was up to $490,000. The renters made enough payments on it that we paid the loans off, so the loans were zero and the value went up there, so the whole thing became profit. Now we took that property and we donated it to the foundation because we wanted to be able to do something great with that. Now we did that exact same thing years later when we did another big unit using the same exact strategy. So the strategy was we found the property, we found it for a lower price, and we looked a lot. Now the key is to write offers. You need to be looking at properties, and the more offers you can write, the higher probability you have of getting a good deal. See, it's just opposite the way everybody else does it. Most people go out there and they try and get their financing first and do everything else. We don't do that. What we do is we write offers. We get a good deal. And once we have that good deal, then we figure out how to get the financing on it. And we figure out how to bring partners in or whatever else we need to do. So many years later, I used this exact same strategy when we bought 28 units. So the 28 units are very similar. There were 7 buildings. There were 7 buildings times 4 units, which is 28 units. There's 28 units. And the purchase price on all those units they were each $250,000. So these were $250,000 times 7, which is 1.750 is the purchase price. That's the price. Now, when we bought the properties, the guy who had owned them previously to that, he bought them for a lot less than that, and he had a big profit margin in there. I says, well, I can go to the bank and pay you off, but when I do, you're going to have to pay a lot of taxes. He had almost $1 million worth of profit in there, and he didn't want to pay taxes on it. So I says, well, how about if I make you monthly payments on it? And so he agreed to be able to do that. And so we took all these units that we had, these 28 units, the purchase price was 1.75 million. And it worked out the exact same way. The purchase price was 1.75. They went up in value. Okay, they went up in value to over $3 million, about 3.25 million. They went up in value on all the loans. This took 25 years. This took 25 years to do this. Went down to zero. Okay, and all of this is profit. Everything in the middle is profit. So this is one of the long-term things that we did. And then we took some of those buildings and we gave them to the foundation. Now, the key to doing all of this is we didn't do this with 4 buildings. We didn't do this with 28 units. We did this with 80 units. And so we bought more and more and more properties. So that's one of the ways that you can do this to make money with your long-term real estate, is find a way that you can fund it. Remember, we talked about the 5 F's. You got to find a good deal. When you're looking for deals, the vast majority of deals do not fit our criteria. Okay, they don't fit our criteria. Only 3% do. And I don't care if you're doing small deals or big deals. The big guys that are buying the millions and millions and millions, hundreds of millions of dollar deals, they do the same thing. They just add zeros. Number two is you need to figure out your financing. You can either bring in a partner to help you with the financing. You can use your own financing. You can do owner financing. Number three is you need to fix the problem. What is the problem? Now, the problem that the one property that I did with the 28 units was the guy owned it and he had his kid and his son-in-law managing it, and they did a horrible job. They just did a horrible job. And he didn't want to do it anymore. He was older. The gentleman owner was older. And so he decided to sell it. And I came into it by one of my teachers at my university. I heard about it. And so I sat down with the guy and negotiated out a deal. And I bought it for nothing down. Basically, it was nothing down. And the first thing we did, though, is we had to kick out a whole bunch of the tenants because they were just junky people. And it wasn't fun. You know, it took a lot of work. But we did that with many, many, many units, and we did that over time. And so that's how the foundation was funded, was because of that. We bought them at a price. They went up in value. The loans got paid off by the renter, making us monthly payments. And then we made the payments on it. And then all that profit is how we made a profit. So when you're doing real estate, that's one of the ways to do it. And we call that farming it. Farming it because they were making us payments on a monthly basis. So we farmed it with rent. It went up in value. The loans got paid off, and we made all of that profit. We took that profit and was able to donate a bunch of that to the foundation. And that's literally how the foundation was funded. So that's another section. And Ethan, if you'll jump in and take us to the website, I want to show you some wonderful classes that you should be going through that go into more and more depth into this. So when you go to the website and you go to the successmoneyfoundation.org and then go to courses. Okay, so let's go over here into the courses section, and then you can see there's the money courses. So let's go down to the money courses, and then we're going to scroll down to real estate. And when you go down to the real estate section, there's a couple wonderful classes that I really recommend that you jump into. So there's three of them that are on there right now, but the very first one is called How to Wake Up the Financial Genius Inside of You. Now, this was a book that was written by Mark Harrelson, and Mark Harrelson actually owned the apartment complex that I lived in when I was going to school up in Rexburg, Idaho. And he owned this big apartment complex, and he was an author, and he wrote this book. Now, my dad taught me about real estate when I was younger, but and then I started learning more from a systems and structure by Mark Harrelson. And so I wrote to Mark. I'm friends with Mark, and I said, Mark, I'd love to be able to give this book and let people read this book online. And he said, sure, you know, because successful people are very good at sharing. What's step number 3? You got to give to church and charity. You got to give to other people. That's just a natural law. It's a marketing law too. Now, he owned that apartment complex, and he was an author. So he brought up a case of books, and he says, you know, some of these students might like these books. Now, think of that. The guy owned the apartment complex. It was a couple hours away from where he lived. I went into the office for some reason, and on that in the office was a case of books. It was just given away, and that was one of the first real estate books I ever read. It's a wonderful book. And what I learned from that was the simplicity of real estate. And I used that same techniques, the simplicity, to buy millions and millions and millions and millions and millions of dollars worth of real estate. So that's one of the first ones I highly recommend you go through. The other two are products by Robert Allen. Now, Robert Allen, I had the chance of traveling with Robert Allen. He spoke at the university I was attending, and I went to his Nothing Down seminar. And by coincidence, he lived in the same city where I was going to college. And I found out where his office was, and I went to his office, and I started harassing him. Not harassing him. I said, I'd like to get a job here. Now, they didn't need anybody with my high skills. I didn't have any skills. I was going to college. And I said, I'm willing to do about anything. And they needed somebody to actually go on the road to one of the events they were doing. And I got a chance to meet guys that were doing a lot of real estate. Now, my college professor taught me theory. These guys were doing it. One of my friends, Nick Kuhn, had bought and sold over 1,100 houses. So I wanted to learn from somebody that was doing it. Well, Robert Allen was somebody that was doing it. And I got a chance to work with Bob. And the book and the course that I really want you to go through is The Road to Wealth. Now, The Road to Wealth is a true story. how he went to an unemployment line in St. Louis, and I helped him design it and build it. Now, at the time, he was buying big apartment complexes, and I was buying little houses. And we became friends because I was working for that company. And I was single, and I got a chance to travel with him because nobody else wanted to travel, and I wanted to travel. So I got a chance to travel all over the United States with him as he was teaching other people about what he had learned and talking about his books and things like that. And it's a true story about how when we were in New York City, we were at CNN, the big cable station, and he was going on to be part of an interview with CNN. And Malcolm Forbes, the famous Malcolm Forbes from Fortune magazine, was sitting there. And I remember people on air was asking, well, Bob, I know you can buy real estate with nothing down, but can the average guy buy it? And he says, well, sure. And they said, well, can you prove it? And he says, okay, well, send me to any unemployment line. Let me select someone that's out of work and discouraged. Let me spend 2 days teaching them the principles of wealth. And in 90 days, they will be off the unemployment line with $5,000 cash in the bank. And people didn't know if he could do it or not. He had proven that he could buy real estate when the Los Angeles Times sent him to San Francisco. And in 72 hours, he bought 7 pieces of real estate without even a driver's license. He proved that you could actually do it. But they said, well, can the average guy do it? Can somebody that didn't have all these assets do it? And he knew it wasn't the money, it was the deal. Finding the good deals is the trick, is the key. And so I went with him. We went to St. Louis, Missouri. I went to 3 of the unemployment lines. I actually went to all 6 unemployment lines handing out flyers. And we had all these people that came to the hotel to be part of a screening process. We took those people and we screened it down looking for 6 people. We ended up with 3 people that we ended choosing, and we taught them for 2 days. And then I was their coach. I was physically their coach on the telephone. And we worked with them for 90 days. And it's a true story about how Steve and Mary bought their first property and made their $5,000 on the 89th day. And it also tells about the other 2 people who made a profit doing their properties, but it took them a little bit longer to do. It doesn't matter how long it takes you, but it's this true story of how finding the deal is really the key. And Robert Allen's been so gracious to be able to allow us to be able to give this product away to people. So that is a wonderful, wonderful book. Also, The Real Estate Launch is another great book on real estate. So these are some of the books that we want you to go through as you get started with real estate. Now, we're going to spend more time getting into more real estate strategies, but the key is I want you to get in and start going through those classes. You'll also notice that when you go into the multiple streams of income, which is one of the other products, one of the other books and courses that we have online, if you just scroll up a little bit, you'll see the multiple streams of income. The 28 units that I just told you about is in that book, multiple streams of income. Go up just a little bit higher, and you'll see there's multiple streams of income in the far right corner there with the blue and green. That is a wonderful book, and you can read all about the deals that I did. And in the Road to Wealth book, you'll also read about some of the first real estate deals I did as well. So that's your goal. You're all going to have to own real estate in your lifetime. You're going to own real estate. Now, the reason you own real estate, the worst case scenario is that you pay it off over time because it's better than just renting. There's some tax benefits for doing it, and it's better than just renting. Number 2 is most likely it's going to go up in value. The reason, because the governments are watering down the milk. They're printing too much currency. So everything's going to get more expensive, and it's expensive now, and it's going to be worse in 10 years from now, 20 years from now. It's never a good time to buy. Okay. But 10 years from now, you look back and go, dang, I should have bought that 10 years ago. So that's kind of the key of where we're going with what we're going to do. So I'm going to highly encourage you to go through those books. And then we're going to talk some more about real estate in other classes next week. So we're going to say goodbye to our friends from around the world, and we're going to come back and we're going to give away some money. We're going to talk about the people that have had the biggest influence on other people's lives. The whole goal is to make a difference. The whole foundation's goal is to make a difference, make it happen. And remember that every life is precious. Why do we do what we do? Well, because we know that the only way that we can truly help people get to their next level, it's not with just knowledge or education. It's with pulling the trigger and doing something. And so that's why these wonderful authors, best-selling authors, entrepreneurs, educators we've taken this wonderful material and put it together so that you can get the right material and information. The problem with social media is it's just a bunch of junk. It's just all kinds of stuff thrown out there. Our goal is to be able to take the best stuff and get you the step-by-step systems, and so you can change your world. And remember, this is for you to help your family have a better life. That's really the goal we're going after, is to help them have a better life. Every parent I've ever talked to, and I've been to 50 countries, every parent wants to have their children have a better life than they had. And that's what the goal of the foundation is. So this is Tom Painter. Thank you so much for watching. Make a difference, make it happen. And remember that every life is precious. Now stay tuned. We're going to come back in our next section, and we're going to give some money away to the top people that have gone through the classes this last week, as well as shared with others.